Starliner Media. Starliner Media presents Music Night at the Majestic with your host, Michael Boswell.
All right, it's time once again for Music Night at the Majestic, and with us tonight, Brian Woodbury. Brian, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Michael. Nice to be on the show. Nice to meet you.
Yeah, likewise. I'll tell you have got one of the more diverse bodies of work of anybody that I have spoken with. So, as we often say in the show, every artist's journey starts somewhere. So for you, where did that journey start?
Well, if you want to get into the boring details, I started playing music when I was a kid. I started writing songs when I was a kid. I studied music in school. I studied songwriting in school with the great Tom Leherer. I went on to write songs for kids' TV for many years, all the while making my own albums and in different kinds of things, sort of quirky pop. And then I did a big band album, and then a blue state country band, and all the while also doing a lot of theater, trying to get musicals produced, mostly unsuccessfully. And
that's the nature of the biz.
It is. And then lately, I've over the pandemic, I've made a 4 CD set, a 4 album project called Anthems and Antithets. And the last volume of that just came out, which is called Rhapsody Filigree.
Yeah, we'll tell you, you mentioned Tom Leherer.
Uh-huh.
What was that like?
Well, I went to University of California at Santa Cruz, and Tom Leherer had always been one of my musical heroes from when I was a kid.
As it should be.
It is brilliant. And much to my surprise, on my orientation tour, someone mentioned, "Oh, and Tom Leherer teaches here 2 semesters or two quarters a year." And I was like, "The Tom Leherer?" So he taught a sort of math for dummies class, because he's a mathematician. But he also taught a musical theater class where we did 5 musicals, sort of staged readings of musicals. We would sort of rehearse. He would lecture about them, teach us about them, and then we'd sort of put them together over a few days and present them in a small, classroom with 100 people coming to watch us. And you had to audition to get into this class. And so I was very pleased when I got in and got to know him pretty well. And I took one of his Math for Dummies classes, which was a great class as well. And then, I said, "Hey, I write songs, and can you give me some pointers?" And so I, presented songs to him, and he was very helpful, and it's great. And he's still at it. I mean, I don't think he's writing anything, but he sure is, still a vital old guy, smart, sharp as a tack, funny as hell.
So, you got to like it.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah. Now, what were some of the pointers that he gave you that you have been able to implement in your work?
Good question. Well, the musical theater tradition is very much about, being precise with what you're trying to say. And, there's a lot of craft in writing musical theater type songs. And his songs are basically musical theater type songs, even though there's not a Tom Leherer musical, or not a one that has been mounted on stage. But the things like scansion and rhyme, making perfect rhymes, and making, not filling too many, not trying to fit too many syllables into a line, as he says in one of his songs. So just that craft kind of thing, but also think about what people might think you mean when you say something that you don't intend to mean. So And also just thinking about the character, whatever your character you're singing from. And I've done a lot of other musical theater studying. I was in the BMI sponsors a workshop called the Lehman Engel Musical Theater Workshop in New York, which is a very it's a very it's a very a great program. It's a very detailed program in they sort of teach you how to write songs, and your peers help you develop your songs and your musical whatever you're working on. So that was a great experience too, which I did in the 90s.
Yeah. I'll tell you, in listening to your songs, you can hear the Leherer influence, not just lyrically, but also in the composition as
Oh,
well.
oh, thank you.
So now, besides Tom, who are some of the other people that you listened to, growing up, that were a big influence on you?
Well, the usual boring old influences, the Beatles, we I can't say anything that hasn't been said about the Beatles, but they are an inspiration and still remain a big inspiration for me. Then I got into, in high school, I got into lots of quirky stuff like the progressive rock stuff. And then that's when I started getting into musical theater, and then also old musicals and old jazz. I was really I was very much into pre-war big band stuff for a long time, and then everything since then has exploded. I was in college. I studied modern classical music. So
Well, to tell me this, who's somebody that people might be surprised that is an influence on you?
Might be surprised. Brad Paisley. I love
Okay.
Brad Paisley. I don't know if people would be that surprised, but I mean, I think a lot of people know Van Dyke Parks was a big influence on me, and then I got to know him and worked with him many years ago, and also recently on one of the songs on one of the volumes of this project. So who would surprise people?
It's kind of an open question
It
there.
is
So
an
tell you
open
what,
question. I have
while you're thinking about
no answer.
it, I was going to say, you mentioned Van Dyke Parks.
Yeah.
How did you come to work with him?
Well, when I was in college, my friends and my wife and my now wife, then girlfriend, and a bunch of us had a band called Some Philharmonic, which was a very quirky kind of avant funk band with a lot of Latin influence. It was a lot of humor and a lot of sort of outside sensibility, sort of avant, but fun. And so we made this album, and my wife Elma just sent it to Van Dyke, looked him up in the phone book and sent it to Van Dyke Parks, because he was he was our hero. He was our he was just someone that we just looked up to so much, because he was very modern and quirky, and yet he had this very old-fashioned traditional streak. So it was a real interesting combination, and just right up our alley. It had that kind of old Hollywood quality. So we sent this LP to him, and I guess she put our phone number on it. He called us up, and he talked to us. He talked to us and said he loved it, and so that's how we met him. And so he tried to get us a record deal. This was back in the 80s. It never happened. But we worked with him. We played some shows, a show with him, and I've known him ever since.
Yeah. Now, what was that like? You hear you're doing a show with somebody who is an artist that you admire, and then all of a sudden you're there on stage with him. What was that like?
It was a thrill. It was a thrill. It was, I've seen him perform for many times for years. And he's a great entertainer, and he always has an interesting ensemble of players, and singers. So it's a delight. And so it was fun. It was when we played with Van Dyke, it was in a magical setting in the Wilgear Theater in the Theatricum Botanicum in I guess it's in Topanga Canyon up in the sort of the wild, beautiful parts of northern Los Angeles. And yeah, it was magical.
Yeah. Now tell me this, were you a big record buyer, collector?
Yes.
As a kid?
Yes, very much so. I imagine you were too.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's where, either allowance money or, job money, went.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So, do you recall what the very first album you bought was?
The first album I bought personally was probably Abbey Road. I remember saving up for it when it was coming out, and after getting my allowance on a Friday, walking over to the record store at the big shopping mall in Oakland, and I forget, what it cost to buy. It was like $4 or something.
I was gonna say back then it was like $3.98 was
I think
standard.
so. And I remember that was great. So
yeah. How about what was the first 45?
The first 45. Oh, first 45 was probably Lady Madonna by the Beatles. Yeah, a big Beatles fan.
Yeah. Now, what's your favorite album as of this moment? Because for me, it changes. 10 minutes from now, it could be a different album.
Oh man,
of the Beatles.
Oh, of the Beatles, probably Abbey Road or Magical Mystery Tour, which I know isn't really technically an album, but I think that collection of songs has my favorite Beatles songs on it. But I've recently gone through another Beatles kick and just been sort of reading as the diehard slightly obsessed fans too. I've been reading some of their some of the books put together by these foaming at the mouth Beatles experts. I read the this is embarrassing, but I recently reread the Beatles recording sessions, which is a painstakingly thorough accounting of every recording session, every take they did of every song, every bounce of those 4 tracks onto another 2-track. It's obsessive. But it's fascinating because I love I love to hear, sort of read about the evolution of that. And as a recording musician, that's sort of where a lot of us start, is in how to put music together, how to arrange things. And anyhow, I feel like this is there's something pathetic about it. But nevertheless, this is something that means a lot to me and probably, millions of other people. So,
well, I mean, if you're really into it, I don't know if you can ever get enough info if you're, that curious about it. Now, the thing that always intrigued me with the Beatles was how you had 4 very disparate personalities, 4 different skill sets.
Right.
Yeah. 4 distinctively different personalities.
Yeah.
And in those situations, you have good days and you have bad days.
That's true.
But like we are watching the documentary on him, the Netflix deal.
Oh right, yeah.
When you could we're watching that post facto.
Right.
So we know how the story ends. We know, but when you watch it and you see the fighting, but yet then you still see John and Paul you know, sometimes subtly going at each other, but simultaneously helping each other.
Yeah.
It's like the two of them together. There's just something magical there
Yeah.
that
Yeah,
was
there is.
missing from the solo work.
Yeah. That's true. Well, I mean, it's so true that we have so much invested in it, and a lot of it is their personalities, the strength of their and the vibe that they just had. And interestingly, they became famous in Liverpool and in Hamburg from being a cover band. And we think of them as these very, some of the great songwriters of the later 20th century pop scene. And there was something beyond just them as songwriters, although the songs are really great. There was something about them as guys, as a
Right.
band that wow, everyone kind of perked up. First, like the teenagers in Liverpool on their lunch breaks were like, they saw how hip it was. And then the people in Hamburg, the sailors on their on leave and at 2 a.m. in the morning, everyone sort of, all these young people kind of went, wow. And then all the art students and everyone was like, these guys have something. And they weren't doing any of their original songs except for when they broke a string or something. They'd trot out When I'm 64. But so it's interesting, the whole cultural thing, and being a kid growing up when that's happening, you can't help but getting caught up in it. And I always try to think of, my prejudice is when I listen to music, I try to listen to the song sort of divorced from the performance of the song and the production of the song, just because I'm a student of song and song craft, and I want to, is that a good tune? Is that do the chords go nicely with the tune? Does that bass line work well with the melody? And how do the words are the words interesting, and do they fit nicely with the tune? So all that stuff is I listen to that, and then if the singer's great, that's another thing, or if the band sounds great, or if the arrangement is beautiful. So, but I try to keep that stuff. I mean, I don't try to totally separate that, because it's all, when music is all together, that's all, everything's part of everything. But I'm more focused on the song itself. I try to distill what the song is, or what the underlying piece of music or music and lyrics is, from just, oh, that woman has a beautiful voice or something like that. And it makes me a kind of a party pooper, because there's some songs that are beautifully sung or have a great vibe or a great feel, but if the song leaves me, the song can just leave me cold, and I'll be like, oh yeah, she does have a great voice, or that guitar player is great, but I don't love the whole recording if it's just because of because it's performed well or recorded well. I have to I'm just focused on the songwriting part more than.
See, for me, when I listen to a new album, I have to actually listen to it probably a half dozen times.
Wow. Yeah.
Because the first time I listened to it, I'm just kind of taking the whole, it's a big picture.
Yeah.
Then the second time, I'll focus either, on the songs, the music, the composition of the song.
Right.
The next time I'll focus on the vocal.
Yeah.
And then, different instruments. Is this if it's a guitar driven song, listen to that, or whatever.
So do you set out to deliberately, this time I'm going to just sort of take it in, and now this time I'm going to focus, or does that just
it just happens happens naturally, and it all depends on the music, because the music sets the production, sets the tone. I'm a big production guy, so I'm often, a lot of times, the production is the first thing. 'Cause there's some records to where the songs are okay,
Right.
The performances are okay, but
Right.
the production is so
Yeah.
good
Yeah.
that you sit
Absolutely.
there and go, okay, you know what? I'm gonna be really forgiving,
Yeah.
on this
Yeah.
because or it
It's
sounds
sonically
fantastic.
just, yeah, it's candy to your ears.
Right, exactly.
No,
But, and then doing that, I often find where, a song that maybe I didn't, spend a whole lot of time on originally, later I'll hear it and I'll be like, "Oh, you know what? I didn't catch, you know,
Mhm.
whatever, aspect of it." And then it actually ends up becoming one of my favorite songs on the album.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it's all subjective.
Yeah.
So
It's
now
true.
for you, go ahead.
No, no, no. I was just agreeing with you.
Yeah. So now for you, the are you fascinated by the production aspect of things, whether you're making a record or listening?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I love listening for that stuff. I mean, so much of it's beyond what I can achieve in my little studio, but I mean, so much, of like current pop music has, you know, these amazing production tools that kind of blow me away.
Well, one of the things that we've discussed on the show in the past is, yeah, having right now with current technology always changes everything,
Mhm.
whether it is the design and construction of the microphone
Mhm.
affecting on where the singer has to be
Mhm.
in relation to the mic. You listen to recordings from, say, the 20s and 30s, the microphones pale dramatically to what was available 10, 15 years later.
Absolutely.
You know, now today, there are more tools, an artist can record a record in their bedroom
Yep.
with more tools at their disposal than what the Beatles had.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Now, that's to me, that's a double-edged sword
Yeah.
because, I think it's real easy to become reliant on the tools that you have available to
Yeah.
you
Certainly.
as opposed to having to think of a way to do it yourself.
Yeah.
And that's why, artists like the Beatles, like Buddy Holly, who were
Yeah.
looking for ways to do something, had to create it on their own.
Yeah. You
You
had to be
know?
you had to be ingenious to
Yeah.
get that kind of stuff on tape.
Yeah. I mean, Brian Wilson. I
Yeah.
mean, all
Absolutely.
the stuff, all the vocal arrangements and everything he did and the way that they did it in the studio, what have
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. So yeah, it becomes a, you know, um, you the your skill evolves to meet the challenge of your paucity of resources. So and contrarily, I mean, and similarly, if you have all the resources at your disposal, you don't have to develop those skills, so those skills atrophy.
Exactly.
But other skills develop too. So I
Well,
don't.
say at the same time, the other side of that is, say, on one hand, it's easy to let the technology do it for you.
Yeah,
On the other hand, if you look at it saying, okay, I have all these tools, how can I use them to turn,
do something.
this apple into an orange,
Yeah,
and create something distinct.
yeah,
So it's like anything else,
yeah,
the instruments are simply tools.
yeah.
And what you do with it, that's where the artistic part
That's
comes in.
that's the creativity. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
No, I
So
think there's
now
so much that can be done, that hasn't even been done, and it's all about to explode even more when they get AI, gets involved, because I've been just seeing these little AI visual apps that they have on that people use on the web that are, doing extraordinarily weird things that you couldn't really think that you wouldn't necessarily be able to do, with just with normal visual tools like Photoshop. I can only imagine. I mean, the AI music stuff has been pretty primitive that I've heard, but I can only imagine it will get very interesting and could be used in very complex, bizarre ways. So,
What intrigues me with the AI music,
mhm.
yeah, music is different than photography in as
Yeah,
much you're capturing an image and it's the composition, the angle, what have you. So, which are technical aspects in a lot of ways.
right.
With the music, there's, obviously the technical aspects, but there's a human element. There's
Mhm.
the creativity part of it is not a technical thing.
Right.
So you have to have a personality,
Yeah.
to create that. So that by that standard, AI would then have to have a personality.
Yeah, but I think people interacting with AI is where it becomes interesting, I think. I mean, I haven't found any of it interesting, actually. I mean, the few things I've read heard in articles, what it really seems to fall down is, well, it seems sort of formless. And it also seems like that they haven't got the lyrics thing down yet at all. The lyrics
Mhm.
are just sort of a randomizing machine. But I don't I don't doubt that they will be working on this and improving this, and they'll be like, give me a Bob Dylan song about, you know, the latest, the current election or something in it,
Right.
and give me a Bob Dylan song that sounds like, you know, um, blowing in the wind about, this brand of Cheetos, and and it will be, I'm pretty sure at some point it'll become kind of convincing and very frustrating for, us old people and songwriters, particularly old songwriters. And but could be an interesting tool to use. I mean,
Right.
although again, your skills will atrophy. You know, I will wonder, like, if people don't if people don't develop the skills to know any better, then the AI can convince them that they've created a piece that sounds like Bach, even though it doesn't sound anything like what Bach would actually write. So,
Yep. Exactly. Well, tell you to digress here, you mentioned
mm.
earlier, Brian, your work in, children's,
Mm.
television, projects. How did you get involved in that?
I got involved in that through, well, I sent some of my quirky pop stuff to a woman at Disney, um, in the 90s. This woman Bambi Moe, and she liked it and called me up and had me write um, a theme song, or be in the running for writing the theme song for a cartoon show called Pepper Ann. And I wrote a couple of spec tunes for the theme song, and they chose one of them as the theme song. So that was my first start, and then um, and so I had the theme song for Pepper Ann, which 20 people in their 20s all know. And then then my friend Dave Yazbek, who's right now writes Broadway shows. But at that point he was doing lots of stuff, but he was doing writing for kids TV, and he put me in touch with Peter Lurie, who was the music director for the show Bear in the Big Blue House. And Peter liked my stuff and had me write some songs for the show. And I wrote lots and lots of songs for that show over 3 seasons. And then I became the music director of the fourth season. And incidentally, that show today is coming back on TV on Disney Plus. So it's been off the air for many years, but it's now back on. And it's a delightful show. It's not sort of one of these shows that talks down to kids. It's very respectful, and it's not babyish. not insipid. It's something that the parents would watch with their kids because they got something out of it. It was very artistically done. The puppeteers are brilliant, and it's got a really warm feeling, and it's not sort of sort of it's not sort of getting kind of buzzing and what's the word? It's not something to sort of agitate kids, although it's entertaining, but it's also something it's very, the main character is this big giant walk around puppet of a grizzly bear, big orange grizzly bear. And he's very friendly. He's very avuncular, and he sort of takes care of these little kids, these little other creatures in this big blue house. So anyhow, it was a great show, and it was a real fun to write for. And I wrote a bunch of songs that I'm very proud of for it. And I did some other TV shows which were fun too. I was the music director for The Book of Pooh, which was a Winnie the Pooh, one of the Disney Winnie the Pooh shows. This was done with puppets as well, and I did that for a number of years.
Yeah. Now tell me this, Brian, is writing for a project like that different than writing for, say, in a, for lack of a better description, an adult TV series?
Well, I've never really written for an adult TV series. So what the thing with the kids shows that I wrote for, it was like musical theater a lot, because you would have a scene, and you sort of set up a scene where someone had a predicament or some topic, and you'd write about that. And each character, if it was sung by more than one character, you had to sort of write from each character's point of view. So it was kind of like musical theater, or storytelling, where sort of a dad saying, oh, this is what it's like when you get lost, but don't worry, you'll get found. So so that it was very much like theater writing, and then but the other aspect of it was you're churning it out really fast. So you have to write a lot of songs very fast. Luckily they're short, 2 or 3 minutes, but it's still a lot of work, and you just sort of get into this flow of just writing, sitting down with the guitar or piano and just writing something and coming up with it quickly, or coming up with several versions and then finding the version you like and sending that in. And if the producer doesn't like it or wants changes, you make changes. So so it became I got really into that process. And when I was music directing, I would write a lot and then farm out the arrangements and production to different people, mainly my longtime collaborator, Mark Muller, who's guitar player, pedal steel player, and everything else. And so I would write a song and I would just send him a really quick demo with just me singing and playing the guitar, sometimes playing the guitar very badly, but just enough to know that to indicate what I wanted him to do. And he would come back with these, great tracks, in 24 hours or less. And so we would just, we kind of had like a little factory
symbiosis thing going on there.
Well, it was a factory kind of thing, because someone would write, and I was also like, I'd call some others. I would work with other songwriters, and I'd say, I need, can you write a song about this? And you have to make sure that the songs are tailored to the characters and the theme of the show. So anyhow, I got into this sort of factory churning out music thing. And when I was embarking on my 4 album project in the end of 2019, Anthems and Antithets, I decided to sort of apply that skill that I had used in making all these songs, because I wanted to make 4 albums, and I wanted them to be substantial. So they're all like 70 plus minutes of almost double albums. So I would, I'd write and I'd farm out some of the arrangement, or I'd farm out send the tracks to the trumpet player and he'd put on the trumpet tracks. And so there was a lot of being able to work on one thing while somebody else is doing the other thing for the same project. So, and that was great. And I just applied the idea of writing many songs quickly to that project. And, not that I wanted to skimp in any way on either the production or the writing. I put a lot of care into the writing and the recording of it. So I was able to get 4 albums. The idea originally was to do them all in 1 year. Didn't quite work out. I got 3 of them done in 2020. And then the 4th one, which was the most ambitious of them, it was sort of the artier songs. That one took most of until July of 2022. So that one took longer, but it was a fun project, and a good use of the skills that I developed writing for kids TV. And the songs are not children's songs in any way. So some of them are very adult.
Well, the last one of that set, Rhapsody and Filigree, your current album,
Right?
that one's out now.
Yeah.
Now with that, you gotta. I was going to ask you, your approach, to that album, but let me ask you this: as a songwriter, are you someone who is a music first writer or a lyrics first writer, or is it just as the ideas come in, that's how it comes together?
I guess I'm a music first, but I prefer to be a lyrics first. I'm really a title first. I have a big list of song titles, and I like to have a title to start with. So, but often I will sit down with my iPhone and record a little voice memo of doodling, just some musical idea will come to me. So a lot of musical ideas just kind of come to me without me trying to apply them to a particular idea. But then if you have some music that you have to fit lyrics to, it's always harder than if you have lyrics and then you're writing music to those lyrics. The music first may be slightly more interesting music, but with a lot of these, I had an idea and I sat down and wrote some music for it, or I had an idea and I thought, oh, there's that piece of music I remember, I could maybe use a little bit of that and put that in there. So I have long lists of song titles, ideas, and then I have a hard drive full of musical snippets and ideas. So I kind of put them together when I have to.
Yeah. Well, when it comes to titles and lyrics, do you often, hear a phrase or read a line in a newspaper, magazine, whatever, and that kind of, that's the impetus?
Yeah, or just some play on words. Often it's a play on words that occurs to me, and then I will jot it down and make something of it later.
Yeah, well, that's where that Leherer influence comes in.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
Now on the new album, what are those? What was the first song that you had for that kind of, and did it set the tone for the rest of it?
I'm gonna have to look. I can't remember off the top of my head which is the first.
I should say the first song that you had completed
Oh,
for the album.
oh, the first song I completed for the album. I think that would be. Sorry, this is the boring part. I'm gonna guess it was. Well, there's a couple of there's a couple of things that I've been working on for a long time on the album. The song that starts off the album is this long kind of prog rock. It's almost like it's a story song. It's like a little mini prog rock opera. It's 9 minutes long, but it's mini in that like a rock opera is two sides of an album of an LP or four sides of LP. So mine is like 9 minutes long. And that one I'd been working on for a long time. It's called Theseus Rex. And it's a story. It's an updated version of the myth of Theseus set in the late 60s and 70s and then into the 90s in San Francisco and then around the world. But it tells the story of Theseus. But in my version, Theseus is the illegitimate son of Jerry Garcia from the Grateful Dead. So there's a kind of a wild kind of magic realism to the whole thing. He ends up in Afghanistan fighting against the Taliban, and then so it's got that myth quality. His mother figures very heavily in the story. It's her name is Rhonda, not like in the original Greek myth. But anyhow, so that was the first one I'd been working on. I'd been working on that one for years. I finally kind of worked out the story and the sort of tone of it. And then so that one kind of sets the tone for the whole album. It's got some wild, very proggy instrumental passages. And it has many singers on it who are playing characters. I'm the narrator. And then the last one I finished on that album is the one is a setting of the Latin Mass. So that's and that's also sort of a long piece. Although for a mass, it's a very short mass. It's 8 minutes long, but typical mass is 45 minutes, an hour, or 2 hours, who knows. But so it's just a setting of the Kyrie eleison and so forth and so on. I tried to do it. I didn't do as much repeating as you do in a normal mass because I wanted to get the idea was to try to get it, have a compact 8-minute mass or less than 8-minute mass. So it's called brief mass. And it kind of races through all the text of the Latin Mass. And I'm not Catholic. I just wanted to do this as just a thing to do. And composers have been doing it for years. So I figured, so it's got, big chorus and orchestral drums and then rock drums and all kinds of things. But there's some more. There's not just big, long, sprawling songs on the new album. There's some little miniatures that are just a minute or two long.
Yeah, tell me this: who are some of the prog bands that influenced you?
Well, the top three would be Yes, Genesis, and Gentle Giant. But there's many others, of course. But
Yeah,
for
Derek
this,
Shulman from Gentle Giant was a guest on the show.
oh, that is awesome. That's great. I
So-
would love to hear that.
Yeah. So
Yeah, they're my big heroes. Well, speaking of prog, on the first album of the first volume of this big project, I have a song called "Give Me Some of That Old Time Prog," which I wrote with my friend Johnny Unicorn, and that one is a very much deliberate send up of prog rock, and it goes through a lot of different, it does a pastiche of a lot of different bands there, and there's a little minstrelly Gentle Giant counterpoint section where me and two others, or I and two others, are singing a kind of a very silly bit that's very much an homage to Gentle Giant. So
Yeah. Well, tell me this: where can folks find the new album?
Oh, well, you need to go to brianwoodbury.com. That's BrianWoodbury.com. And it's all there. It's you can stream it on, I think, all the streaming platforms too. So, but don't get me confused with this other guy.
I was going to say, you better clarify.
So a couple years ago, I was Googling myself, as one does in the arts, and just to make sure I'm getting my due on the internet. And there was this other musician named Brian Woodbury, spelled exactly the same way, a trombone player. And it turned out that on YouTube and I think Spotify and some other streaming platforms, they were putting his new album out. They were putting my albums and his albums under the same artist profile, and on YouTube it was under his artist profile. No, I've been doing this a lot longer than him. So I got in touch with him, and I said, they're mixing up our music on Spotify and stuff. Do you think maybe if the two of us to both write to whoever you can at YouTube and Spotify and wherever, they can sort it out? But of course, you can't really get through to these things, to these entities. They're faceless, mindless. They have some FAQ that you respond to, and they don't, and it doesn't answer your question. And so we tried to sort it out, and I think eventually Spotify sorted it out. YouTube still hasn't. You can't anyhow. But I thought, as a joke, I said, well, we should really confuse the algorithm and write a song together. And eventually I thought, actually, let's really do that. And Brian, the other Brian, was he had just put out this album of kind of jazz. He's a great jazz musician, but it's a sort of postmodern jazz is what I call it. It's sort of not just a straight ahead jazz kind of record. And it was really interesting, and I really liked it. And I thought I'd actually like to collaborate with this guy. He's a great trombone player as well. So I said, let's write the song. And so I wrote some lyrics, and then we wrote the music together. And it's called The Other Brian Woodbury, and it's actually about the predicament that we found ourselves in, of being mistaken for each other. And of course, I'm actually cursing him out in the song about, why did you have to show up and have the same name as me? But anyway, we did that, and then he's in Utah. But we made a video for it. He shot his parts and I shot mine, and the band that played on it that was out here in LA. And then so we have that in this, and it's a lot of fun. And it's kind of like a straight ahead kind of pre-war jazz kind of tune, but then it gets into some more outside stuff like we like to do.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a lot of fun. And it was great working with him, and I ended up having him play trombone on, I think, 3 other tunes on the album because he's such a good player, and it was such a delight to work with him.
Destiny.
Yeah. So on my album credits, I call him Dr. Brian W. Woodbury because he just got his PhD a couple of years ago, and so I have no PhD. So he's the doctor.
I don't even have any Dr. Pepper. So, but on that note, Brian, I tell you, all different styles of the music that you've created, worked in, what have you, or too many to fit into one show. So, but in the time that we've had here, is there anything else you want to make sure that we cover?
No, that's don't say anything else. No, no, that sounds great. No, I appreciate you taking the time to talk to me and tell people about my stuff.
Hey, no problem. It's always good talking about music.
Yeah, it really is.
All right. Well, tell you, we have had your website and social media and YouTube channel scrolling across the screen at various times throughout the show, so folks
Very good.
can find you and get the new album. I want to thank
Check it
everybody
out.
for watching. Brian, thanks for being here. Have a good night.
Thank you so much.
This has been Music Night at the Majestic with Michael Boswell. If you enjoyed this edition of Music Night at the Majestic, follow us on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, and at musicnight.net. Music Night at the Majestic is a copyright production of Starliner Media. Any use of the accounts and descriptions of this program, its audio or visual content, without the express written consent of Starliner Media is prohibited. Thank you for joining us this evening. We'll see you next time for Music Night at the Majestic. This is your announcer speaking. Starliner Media.